I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, maybe it's an analogy to the break in the investigation. You know, it's been a few days since I posted my last video, and there's a transition between what happened up until the previous video, the analysis we did with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and then there was a period of time that went by. Right, and then when the investigation resumes with quite an interesting kind of breakthrough, well, it's the FBI who basically take over the investigation. Now, I must apologize for my voice. I've got a bit of a sore throat. It's a little bit more than a sore throat, but please bear with me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button. One more thing, I'm in America right now. If you want to follow kind of what I'm doing day to day, I do put up a couple of video blogs on the members only section of this channel. If you're enjoying this episode, you can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Okay, so just to put us back into context, guess what happens after Barry's 8th interview with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation? And I must apologize, even though it says police interview and even though it says number 6, we're actually heading to the 9th interview, but some of them are very lengthy and some of them are part 1, part 2. But just to make sure you're not confused in terms of these title slides. So what happens after Barry's 8th interview with the CBI? And do you remember when that was? It was July 8th. The answer is nothing. Nothing happens. After averaging more than 2 interviews a week for about 13 weeks, the investigation seems to stall. August passes without a single interview. September, October, November, and December pass, and nothing seems to happen. You must be wondering, what is Barry thinking when all of this is going on? Does anyone remember what the breakthrough was that brought Barry back into the crosshairs? Anyone remember what it was? Anyone remember when that happened? Well, the breakthrough was proof of an affair, and it came from an unexpected source. It didn't come from Barry, it didn't come from Suzanne or from her phone, they couldn't recover her phone. But it didn't come from her cellular data. It didn't come from her computer. Guess where it came from? Her spy pen. And the preliminary proof was that Suzanne was having the affair. It was in November that the cops tracked down Jeff Libler, no thanks to Jeff himself, who'd been lying low and flying under the radar for months, possibly hoping no one would ever realize his involvement. And I think if you critical or you've got something to say about what was Barry doing, was Barry searching for Suzanne in August, September, October, November, I think the same could be asked of Jeff. What did Jeff do? What was Jeff's thinking? In any event, when Barry is interviewed for the 9th time, it's by FBI agents, and it's near the end of January 2021. What do you think the feds are going to question Barry about? Knowledge of an affair, right? And obviously his knowledge of the affair may go and may sort of play into a potential motive. And if that's the case, what do you think? Is Barry going to admit knowing about the affair? Is Barry going to admit that there's possibly grounds for a motive? Anyway, let's go to page 59 of page 129 of the affidavit. In this interview, Barry stated numerous times, this is the interview from January 27, that he had no idea of the affair, and he asked multiple times to know who her lover was. He initially guessed her lover lived in Arizona, where he was telling Suzanne that he wanted to go on Friday, May 8th. Right, so he'd actually, this is quite interesting. In text, he was saying to Suzanne that he wanted to go to Arizona on May 8th. And he also said that maybe Suzanne's disappearance was a form of God's judgment for the affair. So Barry makes quite a quick transition from not knowing about the affair to kind of being resigned about it, kind of feeling that it's part of God's will. Special Agent Grussing and Special Agent Harris, these are officers from the FBI, agents from the FBI. They met with Barry at his condo in Poncha Springs, Colorado, to inform him of the affair. Now, I must say, I've been trying to ascertain whether Morgan Gentile was also living in Poncha Springs at the time. I do know that at one point, I think in 2020, she was living about 2 miles from the job site in Salida. But I haven't been able to confirm whether she lived in Poncha Springs. It would be interesting to get confirmation of that. Upon meeting Barry as he was walking behind his house and telling him that agents need to speak with him privately, he said, "Okay, I'm working right now. Can I get your number?" Now, if you think about that, he hasn't seen law enforcement, apparently hasn't heard anything for quite some time. And, would an innocent man who's truly grieving his wife the way he was on that Facebook appeal, would he tell law enforcement, "I'm working at the moment," right? Would he sort of fob them off? He eventually agreed to speak with agents. After being informed Suzanne had an affair, Barry asked who the person was and how long the affair had been going on. He then said, "This is a complete surprise to me, and I have no idea of this and would never suspect her of doing this." He later said, "Because I've never seen it on her phone. How was she?" I think that "how was she" is quite a weird statement. What does that actually mean? I think it means, how was she having an affair? How was she communicating, right? It's interesting that he doesn't fully form that sentence. That might be kind of a legitimate question from him, that he didn't know exactly how they were communicating. Special Agent Grussing asked if Barry remembered her handing him her phone in Mexico. You may remember from her notes, she also writes, "took phone," right? Anyway, that he was trying to see who she was talking to. Barry said, yeah, wasn't in her phone, Snapchat? Barry said, "I can assure you I had no idea there was another man." Barry said, "I had no idea they were communicating. And if you guys are trying to tell me that I found out about this and did something, that's completely wrong." And that is the natural thing to think, is that Barry did find out. And, I mean, that would be the logical thing to think in that sense. Although I do think there are other forces at work here than just infidelity. Special Agent Grussing said that Suzanne's and her lover's communication stopped Saturday afternoon. Barry said, "Well, I was with Suzanne. I came home to have lunch, went into town to get the blade on my Bobcat fixed, and I had the wrong timeline on that. So if she was talking to this individual, it had to be done when I came into Salida." Now, if you think about those words, to actually say I had the wrong timeline on that, that is the way that he's thinking about all of this in a kind of investigative way. What are the investigators thinking? What are they saying about timeline? The other thing that's really interesting is he places himself with Suzanne, and in the very next sentence talks about the Bobcat and getting a blade. Special Agent Harris told Barry that Suzanne was communicating with the individual on some occasions while Barry was in the house. Barry asked, "Where's this guy from?" "Arizona." Special Agent Grussing told Barry hundreds of communications existed between Suzanne and this person, especially on Saturday, before Barry came back home just before 3 o'clock. Barry asked, "Can you tell me how many months it's been going on?" Special Agent Grissing said Barry could probably answer that himself. So what's being implied here is that the feds seem to think Barry was aware of the affair all along. That's what they're kind of implying, right? The other thing that's interesting is they don't really answer his question. He wants to know how she was communicating, and the answer is LinkedIn, and they don't actually tell him. So what do you make of Barry, A, having no idea about the affair, and B, not knowing who she was having an affair with or what his name was, given the fact that somebody made 3 Facebook friend requests for 3 other Jeffs on Friday, May 8th from 9:04 p.m. through Saturday, May 9th at 6:01 p.m. Suzanne also seemed to allude in some of her texts to Sheila that she thought it was unforgivable that Barry told their daughter, or plural daughters, she was having an affair. I think she sent a text in March, somewhere around March the 25th, where she said, "Then he pulled girls in and told them everything that day. I lost all respect for him that day." I don't know whether that is definitively a reference to that. But it is quite a concession Barry makes at the moment her interactions with Jeff stop. Barry says he's with her. The last proof of life also occurs on Saturday afternoon. Now, if we trust Barry's story, that extends Suzanne's life to Sunday, the day Barry drives hundreds of miles away to relax in a hotel. Well, then Barry was nowhere near Suzanne when she disappeared. The question is, should we trust his story? Anyway, going to page 60 of the affidavit, Special Agent Grissing said that Barry could probably, okay, so we've done that, could answer that himself. Barry said, "Well, I can't answer that on the way she treated me because she didn't treat me like she wanted to leave me." And of course, there's a section in the affidavit that deals with the steps that Suzanne took to leave Barry. Special Agent Grissing told Barry about the recording pen and the conversation when Barry asked Suzanne to tell him if she loved him, and she could not answer that she loved him. Barry was asked if he remembered that. Barry was shaking his head side to side no as he replied, "Yeah, I remember." And then Barry began to cry audibly. It's interesting how well the FBI are versed on this case, isn't it? That they're able to contradict Barry's statements with facts out of the evidence file. Barry said that she's always been insecure because she didn't have a father. He left, was a drunk. When we were dating, insecure that I'm cheating, I'm having an affair. When we are married and I got a secretary, that I'm having an affair with her. You can go back through my whole entire life. I've never even touched, let alone talked or texted to another woman besides my wife. You'll never find that. Well, there are some reports in the affidavit. A woman called Holly who mentioned something about Barry apparently being quite friendly to her. We'll deal with that later. Barry asked to guess who Suzanne's lover was and said, "It's either David Huff or Kevin Stout. Am I right?" Agents did not confirm, and Barry began to talk about Suzanne possibly being in the river. Does that not suggest that Barry's trying to change the subject? They're trying to talk about who she was cheating on Barry with, and now he wants to talk about obviously something that they might be interested in. Where can we actually find her? Does Barry referring to Suzanne's insecurities seem like contempt? What do you think about that? Special Agent Grissing asked, "The river from an accident or an abduction?" Barry said, "Either one. I don't think it, the way I see it, it was an accident and that she ran from somebody to the river." He continued, "If she got in the river and hit a rock with her head from that could have been a possibility, or that they could have grabbed her at the river and took her up." That's quite a violent thing to imagine here, that she was hit with a rock with her head. The bicycle going down the side of the embankment also suggests, some kind of blunt force injury. Barry was asked if he found out something about Suzanne on Saturday or if someone else was involved. Barry shook his head and said, "There's nothing that I found out Saturday about her having an affair. Nothing." Special Agent Grissing asked if he found out Friday or Saturday if she was having an affair. Barry said, "I told you. I've already told you this. This is the first day that I found out she had an affair. You researched the lady. She's an angel. She's a saint. This just blows my mind, and it's going to blow anybody's mind to find this out." And that's the end of page 61. Next follows quite an extraordinary amount of self-identification. Barry describes himself as an old hothead. He says, as soon as they find out, they're going to say, old hothead Barry found out and killed his wife. Now, personally, I don't actually think the affair was necessarily a central triggering thing. If Barry did commit this crime, and I'm saying if, then I think a bigger factor, was if she left him, then he wouldn't have access to money. And if you think about it, if he's having an affair and she's having an affair, is it really going to bother him that she's having an affair? Right? I'm not saying it's not going to bother him, but is it going to be as much of a big deal? Special Agent Grissing told Barry about the May 6th text wherein Suzanne said, I'm done. Let's just handle this civilly. Barry was working and his responses were that life was not worth living and going to meet my Savior. And life is a mere grain of sand compared to eternity. Barry, you can either see that as sincere kind of remorse, sincere feelings of regret, sincere feelings of woundedness, or you can say that that is manipulative. Barry said, yeah, and I was just trying to hurt her. That's all I was doing. I would never have killed myself with my daughters. Yeah, Barry concedes he was hurting Suzanne with words, but he never hurt her in any other way. Chris Watts said something similar, by the way, and at a similar point when he was being questioned. And it was when it emerged that he was having an affair, he said, I didn't hurt her. I cheated on her. I hurt her emotionally. I cheated on her. Do you think if Barry was having an affair or numerous affairs, do you think that would mean he was expressing contempt of a sort for Suzanne and or for their marriage? And before you get concerned about that contention, it also works vice versa. Had Suzanne reached a stage where the feelings of contempt were now mutual, or certainly where she felt feelings of contempt, when Suzanne told Barry, I'm done, in a text on May 6th, wasn't that an expression of contempt? I would argue it was healthy contempt in a sense, and it was important that she reached this stage so she could finally break ties with someone who she found probably wasn't healthy for her. Now let's go into the last section of the affidavit, dealing with this interview, page 62. Special Agent Grissing told Barry that investigators noted that Suzanne did not tell Barry not to commit suicide. Barry said, I know. It makes perfect sense now why. Back then it didn't to me. I would want her to say, no, don't hurt yourself, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it didn't come. Barry said, I appreciate it, but I want you to know that I've been a Christian my whole entire life. I accepted the Lord. I love the Lord. And he knows why this happened, and I got to trust him. I have to trust that he did this for a reason. So in a weird way, Barry's kind of saying, whatever happened to Suzanne, God did it. It was God's will, right? He's kind of resigned himself to that fairly quickly, having apparently been surprised by this news of an affair. He added, I'm telling you, I had no idea of this until today. But looking at everything right now, things are making a little more sense to me from God's point of view, because I would never understand why God would take away my wife after I fought 2 battles of cancer with her. Now, in her note, she actually says that he would leave during her treatment phases. So that is something else. He's trying to prove his commitment to her by saying, he was with her every step of the way. But in her note, she says something else. He also says, we had 2 miracle babies that we shouldn't have had and had a wonderful life together. Barry continued, I can promise you that I knew none of this until today. So, he's either telling the truth and repeating himself, or it's a case of he protesteth too much. Does he protesteth too much? Barry said, she never talked Saturday to me about leaving. I mean, did you find communication between her and I Saturday about that? Well, you must bear in mind that they were kind of together on Saturday. Anyway, he says, because to me, Saturday was a good day. We had a good evening together Saturday. Friday, we had an argument on the phone. Friday, I'm sure you've seen that. Now, the fact that they have an argument, and Barry acknowledges this Friday, is quite interesting if you consider the possibility that she may have died on Saturday. So I think Barry's got a good point when he says we never talked Saturday and you're not going to find any communication on Saturday. Special Agent Grissing told Barry that for some reason it seems he's placing Wednesday as Friday. And Barry then said, oh. Anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. We'll continue our analysis of the 9th interview. This isn't the full thing, but it's the first by the FBI in the next episode. Again, apologies for my, throaty voice. Hopefully it's going to improve over the next few days. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.